Big season incoming for second-year linebacker Brian Asamoah. We'll talk about it. Going into the 2023 NFL season, one of the biggest things that I think all Vikings fans are going to be looking out for is the contributions from the second-year players, the 2020, 2022 rookie class, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's first draft. Because a lot
Yeah.
of the things when it comes down to Kwesi, I think a lot of the reason the Vikings fans are still skeptical is the drafting to a certain extent. But out of all the picks, I think the one guy that everybody's really looking forward to watching play this year is Brian Asamoah, second-year linebacker out of Oklahoma, pick number 66 overall. I know I was really big into him when we drafted him. I thought he was one of my favorite linebackers from the draft last year. But yeah, and when we drafted him, like, this guy just seems to. This is the type of guy you want on your defense. He's fast. He's high. He got a high motor. He loves to play football. Unfortunately, he didn't get a lot of playing time, probably poorly used in the Ed Donatel defense. You really feel now that with Brian Flores here, Brian Asamoah is going to have an even bigger role in this defense. And I think his skill set is going to be utilized to a very high extent. I don't know, man. I think we could be looking at a big season for the guy. I'm excited to see what happens with him. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, dude. I think the expectations of him are pretty high at this point. I think it's funny. I think we talked about this prior to hopping on here, but they're so high. It's like kind of at this point we just expect him to come in and do a good job. Like if we're talking about any of the other players that Kwesi's drafted so far, we're like hoping these guys can step up. I guess Ed Ingram, you're kind of hoping he can take a step forward, but with Brian Asamoah, we feel like we just have something with him. Specifically, and almost to the point where like nobody's really talking about him right now because we already feel like it, we already know for a fact the linebacker job's his. With Eric Kendricks going, all that stuff, Jordan Hicks, just kind of being there for veteran presence, it kind of really leaves Brian Asamoah is the most likely to be our best middle linebacker on this entire defense. So I mean, that's just what we all think, is that he can come in and do good, but how good can he really do? Because like what you said, we've seen some great things last year, especially towards the end of the draft. Actually, no, I'm going to bring up, or end of the draft, end of the season last year. I'm going to bring up some PFF stuff real quick for him here. So last season, he had a 78.8 defense of grade. Nothing too crazy. Obviously, he's a rookie. He didn't get tons of playing time, nothing like that. 78.1 in coverage, which is also fantastic because he had a lot of very good coverage games. I mean, if you look towards the last part of his season down here, I mean, with the last 3 games of the regular season is when you started to kind of see his total defense get past the total defensive snaps get past the 20s, as he was finally, I mean, we're calling for it all year pretty much to get him some more playing time. And honestly, even in the 20s seemed not nearly enough as how much we would have hoped. But when that New York Giants game was when he hit just kind of, it seemed like another level. That's when he really stood out. Obviously a 91.3 overall defensive grade in that game and 91.7 in coverage, but it was the strip sack that he had in that game that really kind of showed us the difference makers. And you could just, coming into the draft and everything, he was known to be able to like run around the field nonstop, just a high motor guy. And you could see that with him. Like he stood out in a lot more games than just that one. So that's something that was huge about watching him from last season. And I mean, I think we're going to see more of that. But the biggest thing for me, for sure, well, obviously, you want a good player. You want all that stuff. Can he be a Pro Bowl player? He's going to get every opportunity to. And we definitely need him to step up and be really good. And we think he does have that skill level to do that. But one really important thing that we need from him, especially when you get rid of a guy like Eric Kendricks, Zadarius Smith even leaving because he kind of played this role for us for a while too, is and we still have Harrison Smith, but is that leader type of player. And I know Asamoah is young, but for Oklahoma, he was like the heart and soul of the defense. Like coming in from there, there's one huge attribute with him, and is like a natural born leader, even with his young age. I think he can do that, come in and step in, and plus he brings the energy, and that's something that we're kind of missing from this defense. And I think all of us as Viking fans know like who's going to step up and kind of be the voice, because Za'Darius came in and was kind of like that a little bit. Everson Griffin was kind of like that for a while. You know, we don't really have that type of player. And I think Asamoah's style might be a little bit different than theirs, but I think you're going to see that type of leadership coming from him. I mean, almost this is going to be step, because I always do this. I always compare someone to, and this is a fair, honestly, I could say this is somewhat a fair comparison. This is stretch, but kind of Ray Lewis type of, I mean, Ray Lewis, another small linebacker. Ray Lewis, a great leader. And I'm talking from a leader point standpoint. I'm not going to say he's going to be the next Ray Lewis. Hey, I'm not saying he's not either though. So, but from a leadership standpoint, you got to love him from that standpoint. And, you know, if he can come in and play that role like we need him as well, I mean, he's going to be more than just a talent on this defense. I think he can really be that guy who can, you know, hype our players up, have those good speeches, and just prove himself to be a good leader. So I'm excited for that.
I think my biggest thing with him is I think he can fill the shoes of Eric Kendricks. I mean, he's kind of the same thing. Came into it, as you said, like kind of Ray Lewis-esque as well. Undersized linebacker, you know, like just a high motor guy, loves to play football. And Kendricks did kind of have that leadership role on that defense to an extent, especially in the linebacker room for sure. I could definitely see Asamoah doing that. And it's, you know, it's not too difficult to be the leader in the linebacker room, because as you said, there isn't a lot of competition there, which really does make you think that they are expecting big things.
I mean, I'm talking a leader for the defense, not even just the linebacker room. I'm talking for the whole defense, because that's one thing that's different. I think he's more spoken leader than like Eric Kendricks. A lot of our defensive guys who've been veterans are like Daniil Hunter, Eric Kendricks, I mean, Anthony Barr, Harrison Smith. They're like leaders by examples more than they're like a leader, a vocal leader. And I think we're going to just see more of that vocal from a young Asamoah, which would say a lot if we do see that from him, because he's so young. So it's crazy to see a young guy come in and try to be that guy, but he was that guy for Oklahoma. He was the hardest. He definitely was. And that's why I compare that to a Ray Lewis. Like Ray Lewis anyone would say Ray Lewis was the heart and soul of the Ravens. Some people might even say he's one of the GOATs, maybe if not the GOAT for leadership for a defense and pumping a team up and stuff. Obviously, I mean, even after his career, he's kind of went on to, you know, motivate teams and all that stuff. But that's what I mean by a leader. I think he can be leader for this whole defense, not just for a linebacker group.
Very well could be. But I think another aspect of the Brian Asamoah thing, because a lot of people, when they think back to the draft night trade with the Detroit Lions, I think a lot of people think it's basically Jameson Williams and Lewis Cine. Like those are the kind of the two guys that you look at. Like that was kind of the 1-for-1 trade, right? Like we gave the Lions super fast straight runner wide receiver. It was great that, you know, deep shot wide receiver, which I would have liked the Vikings to have taken him anyway, but we didn't. Obviously, we made the trade. We got Lewis Cine, who got hurt in his first season, and as of right now, he's back, but he's still, because of the injury, still practicing with the twos. Hasn't gotten a lot of starting reps. Obviously, Jameson Williams, he's going to be out for a few games because he can't, you know, because of the gambling thing. But I think a lot of people look there. But also, what you got to remember is pick 66, the pick we used to draft Brian Asamoah.
Yeah,
was part of that trade as well. The other pick went to the Packers and then that turned into Andrew Booth and Ed Ingram. So there's a lot of growth on all these guys. But if you look at Brian Asamoah, I think he's kind of the forgotten guy about that trade. No one really talks about him because he was kind of the last guy for the picks that we got out of it.
Right.
But so I mean, this could make that Lions trade look a lot better if he comes in and he ends up being the next best linebacker on this team. And again, like you said earlier, not a ton of competition, but I just, even what we saw in the small sample size last year, I think that's a very real possibility. He comes in and he's at least in the conversation for being in the Pro Bowl. And I mean, God, if he, like I said, if he could just turn out, I think that's the biggest thing. This Lions trade, the trade with the Lions would look so much better, especially if we can get like a Lewis Cine contribution here as well. But I'm looking at Brian Asamoah being the guy that's going to make Vikings fans feel a little more comfortable with that trade in the first place. And obviously, as we've said a bunch already, like they're expecting big things from him because they had safeties. They made sure they brought back Harrison Smith, corners with, Booth and Evans, they brought in Byron Murphy as well as drafted Mekhi Blackman. And then but at other positions where we drafted last year, we still brought in more people this year. Linebacker was the only one where, aside from Ivan Pace Jr. and undrafted free agency, and the guy from the Rams, we didn't bring in any other help at the position. So at the end of the day, it's like they're expecting big things out of Brian Asamoah, and so are we.
Yeah.
So, and I think, and I know he talked about in his press conference last week, he's aware of the pressure on him. Like, he knows that eyes are on him now. He knows he has a huge opportunity here, and I think he's gonna go grab it by the nuts and just go with it. So, I mean, I'd love to see it, and I think we're gonna see some really good things out of Brian Asamoah this year. I think he's gonna be. I mean, is there a chance he could lead the team in tackles? Is he that type of a player? I could see it.
I definitely think he could, especially like he's going to be all over the place, dude. He's going to be all over the place. He's sideline to sideline type of player, high energy, high motor. Like I said, that leader, yeah. I mean, I think, and I wanted to bring this up because actually that's another thing. I was just looking back to the Ray Lewis thing real quick. So apparently they both ran 4.58 combines. They're both around 6 foot. And when Ray Lewis came in, he was around this, I think Brian Asamoah weighed. So Brian Asamoah is 6 foot, 226, and Ray Lewis was about the same height and size when he came in, and they both ran. Actually, Brian Asamoah ran a 4.56, and Ray Lewis ran a 4.58. Obviously, obviously you're comparing someone to someone like Ray Lewis, like obviously I just kind of did earlier, but man, like the guy Asamoah is like has the passion. He has that sideline type of run, linebacker type of. I don't know if he'll ever be like what Ray Lewis was as a pass rusher or anything like that, but man, I mean, if he kind of has a little. He probably won't have the same type of energy as Ray Lewis. It's almost unparalleled. But if you have any little bit of that of Ray Lewis, dude, if he can be the somewhat of Ray Lewis to our defense, I'm just hyped up now because I'm like I didn't really until we were talking about it on here live. I didn't realize how much they actually had in common and how close, how similar they were. So
hey, as long as they can have most things in common. There's a couple. Let's not have that in common. So also like the leadership. Let's go.
It would probably be one of the biggest surprises for any player on our team if some sort of character issues came up for that guy, because he seems such a humble, non-character issue type of dude, for sure. But I don't know, man. I'm excited for Asamoah. I think he's going to bring the energy. I think he's going to be exactly what we and all the other Viking fans expect out of him. And like we said, I mean, no one's really talking about him. And I think that's just because we kind of just assume he's going to come in and feel that. No one's talking about, like with Eric Hendricks gone, no one's talking about the middle linebacker enough at all. And outside of Brian Asamoah, there's, we're a little bit worried, other than having Jordan Hicks there as like a veteran that we already, didn't seen him kind of slip last season. So I don't know. I think that's why the hype around Asamoah is just real right now, and I do think it's going to come to fruition. And will that be maybe not a Pro Bowl season this year, but do I see Pro Bowl in his future? I think there's a real possibility, and I think this is going to be the year that we find out who he really is as a player. But I think we're lucky to have this one, and that's your guy, man. He was in your top 5 linebackers going into that draft. So
Yep. I think he's going to bring a great starting presence. I think he's going to bring the energy, and I know for damn sure he's going to bring the boombox. But anyway, that's our thoughts on Brian Asamoah. We're looking forward to a big season from him. What are your thoughts? Is he going to make the Pro Bowl? Is he going to be a quality starter for this team? Let us know your thoughts on Brian Asamoah down in the comment section, and we'll see you guys next time on the GG Sports Podcast.
Skol Vikes.